Willie, it's a delight.
Well, thank you. I was at Denison here with a pre-meteorological group, and so the upshot of it was that when Rickenbacker went down, they thought they needed a lot of meteorologists, and so I was in the infantry ROTC and wanted to stay in the infantry because I didn't want the intellectual pursuits that would ensue with the meteorological aspect. But at any rate, one of my dear friends, Tommy O'Brien, who was a dear friend of mine, wanted to come to this program here at Denison. And I had also debated here when I was at the University of Akron. I liked Denison University. And when this program was here, it was called Little West Point, and Justice Rehnquist was here at that time, as you know, and Hal Holbrook. And when it was determined that they had overestimated the need for meteorologists and that our program would be going in different directions, they gave us 4 opportunities. One was to go to ASTP, and another was to go to Yale Communications School. Another was to go to pilots training, and the other one was to remain in the Weather Service, which I did, and I went to Selfridge Field from here after graduating from here. Now, Selfridge is where the first military man died in an Army airplane accident. I was there as a weather observer, and then on over to Kellogg Field, where they had the A-20s, and I became a weather observer over there. At Selfridge Field, they had the P-47s with the black pilots, and they were not lieutenants. You didn't have to salute them there. But to make a long story short, when I was over at Kellogg Air Base, a bulletin came out from the federal government that if we wanted to, we could take an examination to go to Harvard Graduate School, where they had a classified program in meteorology. So I took this test, little thinking that I might have any chance at all of passing this, and ended up at Harvard Graduate School. And there they had worked with MIT on some classified upper atmospheric weather systems, and we had famous people up there, Le Corbusier and antennas and so forth. Well, while we were at Harvard, we wanted to go out with some of the girls around, so we went down to Wellesley. They took us down there by bus, and the Wellesley women were just wonderful to us. And one of my good friends, Horace Seeley, met Ellie Richburg there. And Ellie was having a coming out party right about Christmas time of 1944. And I thought, well, this is nice. And she invited Horace along to go to the Richburg party. And Horace was a close friend of mine. And he said, well, I'll go if Bill Lee can go. So I went to the Richburg party on the heels of my very dear friend who died within the last few months, Horace Seeley. And we went to the Richburg home at Chevy Chase. Now, at that time, Roosevelt had appointed Richburg as head of, I recall, the NRA, I believe it was called. And his party was being held at Chevy Chase, Maryland, at his home. And he had quite a number of dignitaries there. And we were from Harvard. As I recall, we were PFCs or corporals, and this was a big world for a couple little guys. So we got in on all these so-called shindigs. I got to meet and dated the daughter of the North American Command of the North American Fleet, and went to the Trubkoika Rum and Coca-Cola song and so forth. But at any rate, at this great party, there was Justice Robert Jackson. And I was so horribly impressed with him. He was such a gentle, kind, fair-minded man. And that has stuck with me ever since that time. And I knew when I heard the discussion today about Nuremberg that if there was anyone that was ever fair and honest about the trial, it would be Justice Jackson. And Bill Jackson was there. I thought at the time that this was his brother. Now, if I may say so, Bill was a little bit more relaxed and a little more of a party person than Justice Jackson was. He was a nice, very nice man. But also there was Thurman Arnold, who fought all of the trust-busting cases back under Roosevelt. He was very warm, friendly, not at all high-hatted, and told us about the common laws related to trust, etc. Henry Wallace was unable to make the party, but I think it's fair at this late date that he brought Evie a $1,000 war bond for her coming out party. During that Christmas period, on Christmas Day, it was his dear relative or son that came in from the battlefields for a Christmas visit, and for Christmas morning we had some, I think it was some bourbon or something at breakfast time. Donald Richburg also wanted Ellie to be able to go to New York on the way back as we went to Harvard, and so he set us up at the Wedgwood Room in the Waldorf Astoria for an evening there. And Richburg, Ellie, Horace, and I had the honor, here again, small people with great people, at the Wedgwood Room in the Waldorf, and there for the first time we saw Victor Borg. Victor Borg was there, and he was just utterly remarkable, and we followed his career all along. But then from New York, we proceeded on back to Harvard, and Ellie proceeded on back to Wellesley. But that's basically it, and I couldn't help but think when it was mentioned today that Justice Jackson was part of this. I felt awfully good about it, you know.
That's terrific. Tell me a little, you mentioned something about the course here at Denison, and you mentioned Rehnquist, and you mentioned Hal Holbrook. Tell me more about this. I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
Well, when we came here to Denison, it was a rather prestigious school in terms of those that were selected for the meteorological service. We had Captain Moore, who was Croix de Guerre, as our commanding officer, and Hal Holbrook was on campus at the time, and there was a place called the Wigwam, which was a canvas, huge canvas tent where the plays occurred. And he was big man on campus here, and I didn't know him, nor did I realize that later on in life he would become so famous. Sure. And but we did know that he was on campus. Justice Rehnquist was not in my flight here, although he was part of this operation, which they called Little West Point, which it literally was. It was a horrendous program here, and there's a long stories to be told about it. But as I recall, he was a very quiet, tall leader of his flight, which I believe was Flight D2, and a gentleman, and I have read his book, The Supreme Court, gave me great insights into that. And we were hoping someday along the line that he would get an honorary doctorate while he was here. He attempted to learn Japanese from Dr. Kato with the hope of going into intelligence. He was not successful there, but he was highly successful later in life, and one of my heroes.
And by the way, Robert Jackson's clerk.
Yes, that's very, very interesting. Right, isn't that something? And we also had another great person here, many great people here. Harlan Smith was our most studious person here, and he ultimately became chair of the Department of Astrology at the University of Texas, was on in Newsweek or U.S. News and World Report for his work on spectrometry and astrology at the University of Texas, and got an honorary doctorate from here. But basically that's about it. It's a long story, and the story goes on about the service, and I'm in the process of writing some of my memoirs. We had a great man here, a genius by the name of Ernie Leach, who derived all of his equations here, and he's here today. At Harvard, he would wake up and figure them all out on his own, and it got so bad that he slept so much at Harvard that they had to put him in the back of the room in Langdale Hall. That's where we had held our all of our classes, and not the labs. That was down at Cruft. But it's really a wonderful opportunity to talk to you today, and I just think it's great that you have this organization. That's just wonderful.
Thank you for your time.
Well, you're welcome. The honor's mine. I'm semi-retired. Yeah, I'm semi-retired. I worked in many different capacities. I was with the job of defending criminals early on in my early law career and trying to straighten them around. Got about half of them squared around, and that pleased me much. I used to get them into the priests, and I'd go into the ghettos with the probation officers and so forth. Later on, practiced law, served all the way from the bottom up under Governor Lauschie in the Department of Liquor Control. Went into the practice up in Ravenna, Ohio, and became a part-time instructor at Kent State, and also was an acting municipal judge and practiced law up there, and have been in the practice for about 53 years. Member of the Florida Bar, Ohio Bar, and then went with Bill Saxby, who ultimately went on as a United States Attorney General, and served under him for 4 years, mostly in the medical boards area, and then became administrator of the state medical board, the state of Ohio, and retired.